This is Confessions of an Ambulance Chaser, episode 1.5. I'm Katie O'Brien, and I am not an ambulance chaser because that's illegal. If you missed episode 1, go ahead to our page and check it out. Please like and subscribe so we can reach more people, and comment below. We want to hear from you. So I'm not an ambulance chaser, but I've been called out throughout my career. You know, you go to a cocktail party, and if you make the mistake of telling people you're an attorney, the first thing you get is a bad lawyer joke. My favorite is, what's 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the sea? A good start. But if you say you're a personal injury lawyer, then you get, oh, so you're an ambulance chaser. Which all I have to say to that is, I did not choose personal injury, it chose me. Even all the way back in law school, I went to law school for totally different reasons. Personal injury was not even on my radar. I went to law school because as a high schooler, I worked at Walmart, and during the training videos, they said, if a union member tries to approach you, contact your supervisor immediately. So as a high schooler working at Walmart in the health and beauty section, bored out of my mind, I started to wonder why a company like Walmart wouldn't want unions for their employees. And then I kind of started to realize why. They were doing things like locking the door at the end of the night and asking me to work off the clock, which later was a class action lawsuit. But I digress. So I went to the law school with the idea that I would become a labor and employment lawyer and help people at work, protecting their rights and making sure they were being treated fairly by their employers. I felt like this was a noble calling. And at the time, I was dating a guy who would tease me incessantly and say, you're going to become an ambulance chaser. And I would get so annoyed with him and say, no way, I'm never doing that. But I guess what you resist persists, because here I am. So I went to law school, and it was back in 2004, 2007, when globalization was really on the rise. And in these employment law classes, we talked about the fall of the unions. And at the time, the National Hockey League was in a lockout with their labor union. And all that really was going to be left in that practice, it seemed at the time, was discrimination cases, which are very hard to prove. And I wasn't really interested in that. But then I started taking things like evidence, criminal procedure, trial practice. And I realized in that moment, in my third year of law school, that I didn't want to be an employment lawyer. I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And I like to joke that I'm like Michael Jordan, because I did try out for my law school's moot court team, and I didn't make it. But later in my career, I've had multiple excess verdicts and was part of a trial team that won a $1.56 million jury verdict. So I came to Dallas and really had to work my way into the legal field here. I started out working with a solo attorney, doing a little bit of everything, but we also did personal injury. So I got to kind of get a taste of that. And then that job was just going nowhere, and I landed in a high volume personal injury trial firm. We were taking cases that other lawyers didn't want, like slip and falls and cases that were going to have to go to trial, and we would take them to trial. And I got to try my first jury trial, and that feeling of not only representing our client and helping her tell her story, but getting up in front of the jury, it was just exhilarating. So then that's kind of the path I took. And, being an injury lawyer is not easy for a number of reasons. The first reason is you're dealing with injury victims who have lost so many things. They might have lost a family member. They might have lost their mobility and health. They've lost maybe their job because of their injuries. They've lost income. They've lost things they could do without thinking about it. Like I've had clients that were avid runners, or they talk about, putting their kid on their shoulders, and they can't do these things anymore. And so for that person, it's an incredibly stressful time. And what ends up happening is the insurance company tries to make them look like they're faking, drags out the process unnecessarily by denying the claim and saying that it's fraudulent. They even hire investigators sometimes to follow our clients and make sure that they're not faking their claim. So, and this can drag on for years, the whole delay, deny, defend tactic. You're up against the insurance Goliaths with have their own attorneys. And, when you're an attorney in litigation, it's war. Like, you are trained to represent your client and tell their story, and you know the different rules of procedure, and you know how to get the evidence and work up the case. But on the other side of that is an attorney who's trained in the same things, but they're trying to kill your case. It's not like that in other professions. Like, there's no surgeon that's playing defense when someone's trying to do open heart surgery. So there's so many reasons why what I do and what injury lawyers can do for a living can be very challenging. That's why I kind of take offense when I'm at a party or I meet someone, and then they write me off as an ambulance chaser. This is not an easy practice. But the fact is, I'm passionate about the law and what I do. And so that's why I'm doing this podcast in hopes to kind of spread the word about the good work that plaintiff lawyers do, because there's so many amazing plaintiff lawyers I've met throughout my career, especially here in Dallas, but also to kind of educate people who maybe haven't had an experience with an injury case or the process and want to know more about the law. And I'm sure we'll discuss other topics. We actually discussed habeas corpus in the first episode. Go check that out if you're interested. But I wanted to talk about what actually is an ambulance chaser today. So an ambulance chaser is an unethical attorney who literally chases injury victims. They literally chase the ambulance to the hospital. And it's also a crime. So right now, there's a bill on the governor's desk waiting signature that is really great because it's going to increase the penalties for ambulance chasing, or we call it in the law barratry or solicitation. So barratry and ambulance chasing isn't limited to just injury lawyers. There was an attorney here in Dallas that would go hang out at Frank Crowley. And, there's people at Frank Crowley that don't have lawyers. And so they would get called in by the clerk for their court date. And this lawyer would approach these people and sign them up as clients. And all of a sudden, all the defense attorneys that were on the wheel started noticing, like, hey, where are all these clients going? And it's because this lawyer was scooping them all up, which is completely illegal. And so what happened was this lawyer got charged with multiple counts of barratry. That's what it's called under law when you illegally solicit clients. So I am not an ambulance chaser, but I am here to hopefully educate you about the good work that injury lawyers do, and hopefully talk a little bit about things in the law that affect your life, and so you have a better understanding of that. So make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast and comment below what you want to hear about. So basically, if you're in an accident and a lawyer calls you, 1, that's illegal, and 2, you should report them, and 3, don't hire them. There's also groups that try to find workarounds around this, like lead gen companies or case runners. There's a group right now that they're accessing police reports after a crash and then calling these injury victims to try to get them to sign with a lawyer. Because these companies aren't lawyers, but they're feeding the cases to the lawyers, right? Don't hire them. I had a client who I just knew her through some volunteer work I do, and she was in a car crash. She was hurt, and she told me that when she had that car crash, her phone was ringing nonstop with people trying to get her to sign with attorney. If they're calling you, don't hire them. Do your own research and hire a trial attorney. Or you can hire me, KDO Law. I'm happy to help you. This is what I do. Have you ever been in an accident and then were contacted by an ambulance chaser? Tell me about it in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.